What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Moonbuilt Garage. Well, y'all saw the thumbnail. You read the title. You know what's in the box.
We got a box! I'm gonna open it.
Give me the box! What was in the box? What's in the box? What's in the fucking box?
Let's get it open and check it out.
Is that what I think it is? Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
There she is, guys. The Holley Sniper EFI in all her glory. Now, the kit that I got is just the throttle body with the hand controller, along with obviously all the associated wiring harnesses to go along with it, with the coolant temp sensor, the O2 sensor, and then obviously power and all that. I didn't get the kit that has the fuel pump and fuel lines and everything with it, because the D100 has already got a fuel system more than capable of handling this thing. So let's get to installing it. Knowing that the Holley was showing up today, I took care of some preliminary items just to be ready for it when it got here. I drained enough coolant out of the system so that I could take one of the plugs out of the intake manifold to install the coolant temp sensor. I've also already gone ahead and got the carburetor completely ready to come out. All I have to do literally is lift it. It's not even bolted down right now. As far as fuel goes, like I said, I've done a video already, and I'll link to that up here, where I redid the entire fuel system on the D100. And I did that with the plan of eventually going fuel injection. So when I decided to run the carburetor, I had to swap the fuel pump out that I had installed. So I did that also this morning. I went ahead and I took out the low pressure pump that was there for the carburetor, and I reinstalled the Deechworks, I think it's a 250 IL. It can do, at 12 volts, it pumps like 60, 70 PSI. I forget the actual like liters per hour, but according to Deechworks, that pump can handle anywhere from 400 to 600 horsepower. So it should be more than enough to feed the Sniper EFI. And it puts out, like I said, between 60 and 70 PSI. And the Sniper EFI has a built-in regulator that knocks it down to, I believe it's about 58 PSI. So my fuel system shouldn't be an issue. So let's go ahead and get the temp sensor installed, remove the carburetor, and we can bolt down the Holley EFI. Apparently my coil's in the way a little bit. All right, right, so you saw that I had a little bit of issue with the coil. The way it sat in the bracket didn't really allow the throttle body to fit on the intake. So I just had to loosen that bracket up. I could slide the coil back, and now everything clears. It's a little tight on the return line fitting, but should be all right. And if need be, I'm sure I can always move that bracket some more if need be. But I took this opportunity to read the directions a little more in depth. I already kind of glanced at them to get an idea, but I really wanted to look at things because a couple things with the wiring. First, actually before I get to the wiring, I did have to modify the throttle bracket where my throttle cable connects. There's a hole right here that they tell you to mount your stud or the ball stud or whatever for your throttle cable to connect to. My fitting or my stud that my throttle cable went to didn't fit on this bracket. So all I did was I just ran a tap through that hole, and then I cut my existing bracket down, and now it all fits, and I got it backed up with another nut on there. So that's not going anywhere, so that's good to go. Just a little gotcha there a little bit. But it was more with the wiring. So looking at this one here, this little 2-pin purple goes to the temp sensor that I installed in the intake manifold, which that sits just fine. There's this 10-pin connector that I'm not going to be using right now. This is used, it's an input-output cable, and this is used for driving like an AC fan, or if you want to have your Holley trigger like your radiator fans, stuff like that. So aftermarket gauges even. So I'm not going to be using this connector, so I'm going to find a way to seal this and then tape it up. I'll probably use some rubberized tape to wrap it, and that'll keep any moisture out of there. The other issue that I ran into with the wiring had to do with the main harness. So I've got it sitting here on the engine. The way it was routed, it didn't really work for me because here's the end that goes to your EFI. Well, they had my ignition wire, the wire that goes to ignition power, was running back towards the throttle body. Didn't really make sense to me. So I just ended up, I cut the zip ties off the loom and I pushed the wire back through. It's got a little bit of a loop right here. You can't really see it because I did retape it. It's got a little bit of a loop here instead of a crease. I don't want to crease that wire. So it just has a little easy loop to it, and it comes back down, back through, and my tape is not taping. I'll have to work on that. And then I ran it back down this way. I was trying to find a way, because since this has power already incorporated, like a relay here for fuel pump, I've already gone and done that. But I think what I'm going to do is just use the existing. I thought about taking this stuff out of here that I don't need for like the fuel pump, but I mean, Holley went through all the trouble to do this. I might as well use what they have. And it won't be that difficult. It's just a matter of putting this relay in place of the one that I have. Excuse me. For the fuel pump, this one's for main power, and then obviously run my main power directly to the battery, not to a junction block or not to a splice or something like that. This is going to run directly to the battery, same with the ground, and then my switched battery, I'll find a good switch source to connect this to. And then this purple wire actually is going to go to my ignition box tack signal. So I've already got that connected, and the connector is actually inside this loom now. So now I'm going to drop the throttle body on and start routing some cables. hopefully you guys can hear me okay. I mean, being that I am in Vegas, it is starting to get stupid hot here in the Moonbuilt garage. So I've got a portable swamp cooler running here, so I actually have it on low right now to hopefully keep the sound down a little bit. But it's been a few days. I mean, I was waiting on a few parts. First, I replaced the fuel pressure regulator I was running for the carburetor with another inline fuel filter. I was also waiting on some AN fittings to connect the fuel lines to the Sniper EFI. With all that done, I'm now ready to fire this thing up for the first time. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about, wire routing and connections and stuff like that, because everybody's configuration or everybody's setup is going to be a little bit different. The only important things that you need to keep in mind are to make sure that you run your power and your ground directly to the battery. I also tied in right here to my tach sensor coming from my ignition box, and I do have a good solid switched power source for the EFI. Those are the 4 connections that you really only need to make. All your other connections and cable routing are going to be specific to your engine, your vehicle, whatever. So I'm not going to go into that much detail. The only issue that I expect I might have has to do with my O2 sensor. So the quick start guide that comes with your Sniper EFI says that you can install your O2 sensor anywhere from like 1 inch to 10 inches after the collector if you're running headers. But if you look at their full manual, if you download their full manual from their website, they want you to put the O2 sensor further from the collector. So there's some discrepancy in the 2 documents. Now when I built my exhaust, I included an O2 bung basically right after the collector, and that's what I'm using for my O2 sensor. If that should become a problem, then I will use the supplied clamp-on O2 bung and move that O2 sensor further from the collector. But I'm going to run it the way that I have it for now. If it becomes an issue, I'll deal with it. So in all honesty, all transparency, I've already turned the system on. I did that so I could input the initial engine parameters, my engine displacement, my cam. I could set my idle, which I set to like 750. All that is in your setup guide that comes with your Sniper. Really straightforward, really simple. I also turned it on and off a few times so I could pressurize the fuel system and check for any leaks. But at this point, I'm ready to do the first start of the Sniper EFI. All right, so at this point, I'm ready to start the truck. Now, again, these steps are all covered in your installation guide, but I'm gonna start the truck and then I'm gonna let the system get up to, at minimum, 160 degrees. At 160, the ECU will go into learning mode, and I'll be able to go on to the next step, which will be to adjust the idle air control. Now, I expect that when I start it, my idle is going to be high until it warms up, almost like a choke on a carburetor, basically. I think the idle is going to be high, and then hopefully once it hits that 160 degree threshold thereabout, the idle will come down to my set idle of 750. It may not come down until I start to adjust the idle air control, but we'll see. So I'm going to get the truck started up and let it get up to 160 degrees. So I just did the idle air control adjustment after letting the truck get up to 160 degrees. And I realized during all that, I didn't have my wireless mic turned on. So all I did was, when I first started the truck, you saw the idle was up around 1,000. I backed out the idle air control until I heard the RPM drop. And I started making little like quarter turn adjustments on that idle air control, which is basically the same idle adjustment on a carburetor. So I started making those little adjustments to the idle air control until I got that up to around a 5 or 6 while maintaining my 750-ish RPM range. Really simple adjustment, just a little bit at a time until you get it where you want it. But now that all that's done, I can take this thing out, drive it around. You want to kind of be not conservative, but you want to drive in different situations. You want to do some stop and go, you know, hit some stop signs, drive some neighborhood streets, whatever, maybe get on the freeway to get it up, you know, to higher speeds. Just a variation in driving conditions. You want to do that for a little while before you kind of really take it out and romp on it, go wide open, things like that. So that'll be the next step. All right, let's get this thing out for its first test drive with the Sniper EFI.